Welcome to the Christina in the Valley podcast, where we delve into the lives and journeys of the remarkable individuals making waves in their field. Today, we have the privilege of sitting down with the inspiring Barbara Spitzer, a trailblazer in both her professional and personal spheres. Barbara's story is one of resilience, reinvention, and embracing change. From navigating the highs and lows of her illustrious career to embarking on a new chapter as the founder of her own consulting firm, she has continually demonstrated a steadfast determination to carve her own path. In our conversation, Barbara candidly shares her experiences, including the pivotal moments of being laid off for the first time in 35 years, which served as a catalyst for profound transformation. We'll explore her professional mission and how she's translating her experience into meaningful impact. But our discussion doesn't stop there. Barbara bravely opens up about her journey with late in the game anxiety disorder, revealing how it reshaped her perspective and priorities, both personally and professionally. Get ready to be inspired as we uncover the layers of Barbara's remarkable journey and glean invaluable insights into resilience, adaptability, and the power of embracing change. This is Christina in the Valley, where authenticity meets empowerment. As always, if you love our chat, please be sure to like and follow so you never miss an episode. The best way to support this podcast is to share with your friends and family. Follow me on Instagram and TikTok and YouTube at Christina in the Valley for some exclusive and behind the scenes content. Let's get into it. Barbara, welcome to the Christina in the Valley podcast. I'm so excited to have you. You've been such a great and biggest supporter of this podcast. So it means so much that we get to sit down, have a conversation, and talk about your life today.
Thank you, Christina. I am so excited to be here. I think I told you we were preparing that I listened to a bunch of episodes I didn't get to hear last year, and it just made me so much more excited for this moment. So thanks for having me.
Oh, so special and such a 360 moment kind of coming back to where we all started. So I'm really excited about that. I wanted to start with your early childhood to get a feel of who you are, what it was like growing up. And I know that you grew up as kind of an army brat. So I wanted to talk about how you think that that may have influenced your choices and what that really felt like for you as you were growing up.
Thanks. It's so funny. I was out with a girlfriend last night. She goes, "Oh, you didn't read Hello, God, It's Me, Margaret." And I said, I might have, but there's so much from my childhood I don't remember because I moved 15 times by the time I was 13. And so my father was in the army. He served in Vietnam. Back in the day, they used to ship families off every 6 months to 1 year to a new place. But, we lived in France and Germany. It was super. So, when you're a child, you don't know any point of comparison, right? Like that was my life. We didn't settle down until I was 13 when my dad retired at the Pentagon. And I stayed in Northern Virginia. So I went to high school and college in Virginia. So, you don't really know. I didn't really know or think about it until I really settled. And I started making friends in Virginia who grew up together, since kindergarten, nursery school. And, I realized, gosh, I miss the gymnastics, competition. I miss the ballet recital. We do all that, but then we'd move before we had the chance. I thought a lot about it. And I think that upbringing is what made me a successful consultant, right? I spent my entire career as a consultant. So on the one hand, it made me very resilient. Like I could walk into any place as the new person and find a way to make myself comfortable, so I was a little fearless like that, at least on the outside. On the downside, I'd say I'm very shy, and people don't really believe me when I tell them that, but I'm really shy person. I had a lot of anxiety around, my life because always being the new kid and, oh, they make their R's different here. Now I got to learn a whole new R and kids are going to laugh at me, so that sort of, anxiety is something that carried with me my entire life. I think that it really made me a good consultant because I could walk into any client organization and feel comfortable, get to know what's going on really quickly, the culture and things like that. And besides, it was a very adventurous life. We were always packing up, moving and going somewhere else. We always got brand new bedrooms decorated in our favorite color each time we moved. So a lot of good things about it, but I think it's just made me this person that I am and got me into my career and successful.
Do you think that traveling around that much when you were younger contributed to your love for travel now and your love for scuba diving and underwater photography?
Yeah, I'm a real adventurer. My mother was a big traveler, really up until she couldn't travel anymore. And, she traveled the world. And after she passed away, I found her travel journals, and she would write 3 or 4 pages about what she saw, what she learned, what she was feeling. And I the same, I used to have a blog where I would blog. I was in Bali, I was in Bali. I was like, where's your husband? I'm like, oh, well, I don't have a husband. After like 10 times of, oh, I'm so sorry, ma'am. I finally said, oh, he's at home with the kids. I'm on my own having a, so I used to blog and I wrote that blog. It was got a lot of attention. So no, I have been around the world about 4 times with my scuba bag and visited some of the most exotic scuba places around the world. I love traveling. Can't say that I really miss business travel, especially domestic. I think that's very true. A little bit of a wanderlust here.
Oh, love Wanderlust. Yeah, the business travel versus personal travel. I travel a lot for work, and people always say, "Oh, you get to go to so many wonderful places. Aren't you excited? Aren't you like so thrilled to be going to Canada? I've been to Ukraine and some really interesting places." But when you travel for work, you're traveling for work. It's not like you're going to, go on this vacation. I don't leave the office when I travel, so I'm sure you experience the same thing.
Oh, the places you've visited that you've never been to because you have no
Yeah.
time to go see things. Yeah. Yeah. Not so glamorous. Not so glamorous.
So, outside of your traveling, what other hobbies do you have? What are your passions? What kind of lights you up inside?
Well, you know about my scuba, my photography. I started taking underwater photography lessons about 5, 6 years ago. And it's very difficult, right? Because I'm not a land photographer. So learning like, f-stop and aperture underwater where there's no light, everything's blue, and you have to figure out, how do you get it? Oh, and everything's moving, wiggly little fishes.
Yeah.
But I love it. I will say I'm passionate about the ocean. It has changed a lot. For example, I went to Grand Cayman the week before last, and I usually burn through my camera battery in 2 dives, and a camera battery would last me 2 dives. Why? Because there weren't as many creatures in the sea. There just aren't, and there's a lot of coral bleaching, spina coral disease. It's just, the ocean is resilient, but it's struggling. So my passion of scuba diving is I'm planning on turning it into some philanthropic work around the oceans. So that's one thing. And then the other thing is the arts. I love going to performances. Yesterday, I went to the New York Philharmonic. I've got a season pass, and there was this Strauss piece, and there were 24 French horns, two tubas, and huge strings and percussion. And my seats are right over the stage. So you're not only hearing the beautiful music, you're watching it. So I love the arts. There's a new performing arts center down the street. It's on the World Trade Center grounds. I'm a patron. Their work is avant-garde, and it's pay what you can pay, so that people who don't have the money to go to Broadway or whatever, I have $25. Pay $25 and come see the show. So it's very inclusive and beautiful. So the arts and the ocean, I'd say, are my two passions.
I want to go. I'm gonna fly. I want.
Come,
That sounds so cool. Next time I'm in New York, I'll have to go because I also
you
love the
must.
arts and love
Yeah.
museums. Love to explore. I think when you love to travel, one of the greatest things about traveling is experiencing the culture, and art is usually a big part of that.
Absolutely. I just wandered through Paris over New Year's, and I just popped into museums and very casual. Yeah, art and culture is such a critical part of life. How are we going to learn about things that aren't within our sphere of existence? So I try to go see like the local. I'm going to Singapore in March. There's a great Asian museum that talks about the history of the Asian country and society and culture. So I'll be going there.
Wow, Paris for New Year's and Singapore in March. I think that goes back to that wanderlust aspect that you have and hold so dear to your heart.
Definitely. Cuba in June.
Oh my goodness. Well, on that note, do you feel like your personal life has influenced your career and maybe vice versa?
Yeah, that's such a good question. I don't know about you, but I feel like I never had a plan mapped out for my career. I don't know if that comes from always moving, packing your belongings up every single year, unpacking them, pack, unpack. My life was a constant, lack of stability. So when I went to grad school, got my master's in organizational psychology, I was looking for HR jobs or consulting jobs. And I found a consulting job with Hay Group. And that started my 35-year career in consulting. I didn't really have a plan when I took that first job. I know I was tenacious. I know I thought I could do way more than I probably was doing, and I was ambitious. I really didn't have a plan. And, when I did finally leave my career, I look back on it and say, could I have been farther along by the time I left? Could I have made more money, and then I'm like, that's ridiculous. I had a wonderful career, and I think this life of moving around all the time, I wasn't uptight about the next thing. I always sort of trusted that I was going to get to the next thing when I needed to get to the next thing. I'm not saying I wasn't frustrated when I was passed over or didn't get, the bonus or the raise I wanted. But I kind of always had this faith, that it was all just going to be what it was going to be. So I think there's an interplay with that early experience and how I actually managed my consulting career for 35 years.
I don't have a plan. It's interesting because I look at everybody who is later in their career, and I'm definitely earlier in my career, and people ask me who are younger than me, oh, well, what's your 5-year plan? What's your 10-year plan? I mean, I don't know if I should be saying this, but I don't know. Like, I trust that the universe kind of has a plan for me and I go along with that, but never in my life did I think that I'd be currently in the job that I'm in, and yet I love it so much. I don't want to do anything else. So it's tricky. There are these pivotal moments that happen that maybe you weren't expecting. You get the job that you didn't think you wanted, or you get passed over the job that you really wanted, and yet somehow life has a funny way of working out for you.
It really does. I think if, looking back, right, I wish I believed in myself more. We all have these things. We call it imposter syndrome, call it whatever you want. Everyone, male, female, it doesn't matter who you are. Some people are just better able at sort of working through it, but it's really believe in yourself. Like, even if you don't feel it inside, tell yourself you believe in yourself. Like, that's one thing. And the other thing is wealth creation. I don't care what earnings level you're at, but it is about setting yourself up for the chapter that I'm in now, which is post full-time employment. I really focused on making sure that I created the wealth that I needed to do this, what I'm doing now. I think with those two things in your heart and mind, without being like driven with ambition about wealth creation, that you become so fixated on that you're not seeing the bigger picture, or that you're stomping over other people to get where you want to get. And those aren't good. But it's about believing yourself enough and knowing what you need for the long term in your life, not just where you are today. It's something that, looking back, I wish I had more of that, but wish I had a little bit more focus on the longer term picture.
I think every young person listening to this podcast is going to think, oh, I don't need to worry about planning for retirement. I'll start planning in 15 years, or I don't need to worry about that wealth creation piece because, oh, it's just going to work out. But let this be your sign that it's never too early to start planning. As soon as you have a job, that's something you should be thinking of, 401ks, your Roths, what have you, because it really does make a difference.
It does. Life goes by fast. It goes by really fast, Christina, and I was thinking back on, I want to work for maybe another 10, 12 years. And I think, well, what was 10 to 12 years? What was I doing back in the history? I know exactly what I was doing, and it doesn't seem like it was that long ago. So those next 10 to 12 years are going to come really fast. You don't have to have the answers, but to me, it's like, believe in yourself and kind of know what drives and fuels you, and then make sure you're building the wealth necessary to do what you want, even though you may not know exactly what that end game is, but it's going to require something other than a full-time job forever, because that's not going to happen.
Absolutely. And the other thing, maybe women who are in my network, women my age, are kind of considering, people who want to be in high powered jobs versus want to have a family, want to have kids, get married. It can be a dichotomy. Oh, I feel like I have to choose kids and, a family, or having a high powered job. But what was your decision like making that choice?
Things are so different now, Christina, thankfully, but but they're different and they're not different, right? What's not different is that the mother has a different role to play, especially when the children are babies and young. It's just true. I never had children, so I am always in awe of working moms. When I started, it was hard for women to get ahead and have children. Nowadays, you can go work for a firm that actually understands that women need to go away and have babies, get better, bond with their children and their family, as do men, by the way. Men need paid paternity leave, and they have it. Go find a company to work for that really values maternity and paternity leave if you feel like you want to have a family, and don't work for one that doesn't, because you need that support. For me, I got married when I was 35, and I always call it a mismatch made in heaven. Michael is a wonderful man, and we had a lot in common, but we probably had more not in common than we had in common. We only lasted 3 years. It was an amicable split. But by that time I was 38, and I said, okay, well, do I want to have children? I could do it by myself. So do I want to be a single mom? So I set a goal and said, by the time I'm 42, I'm going to have that decision made, because you can still have a child when you're in your early 40s. And by the time I was 40, I said, no, I'm not. I can't. I'm a little bit too selfish to do it by myself. I just didn't feel prepared, even financially, that I was going to be able to manage that and some of the sacrifices. And so I made a conscious decision, which I have never regretted. I have 5 nieces and nephews, age 6 to 36. I'm the only one without kids. So I get to be Aunt Barb. I get to spoil them, and I love them all to death. And so that's been fulfilling, and as you go into my phase of life, I have a lot of freedom, what I can do, with what I have accumulated with my money. I'm on 3 nonprofit boards. I give a lot of my money away. I spend it on myself to go travel. What are you going to do with your resources, your time, your treasures, and your talent? And for me, not having children wasn't necessarily about that, but I said, if I meet somebody, I'll have a kid. I love to have kids. But I never met anybody within the window of doability. I felt like I controlled my decision by giving myself a deadline and making it before my deadline.
One of my greatest goals on this podcast is to share that there are so many different paths you can take than maybe what you hear about or what you see, or maybe you see on social media or the movies, because you've lived such an incredible, successful life. You have so much more to do, but yet sometimes some people say, well, you didn't have kids, you didn't pursue that path, and that's not the only option. Like, there's so many other great things to do.
There are, and look, companionship is one of the keys to living a long health span, growing old healthfully. And so having people in your life is really important. And that can take many shapes and forms, whether it's your family, your immediate family, your own family, your adopted family, your friends. That's what really matters. And yeah, life takes so many forms. Loneliness happens to anybody, whether you're alone or not alone. And it's just a part of life. I feel like your generation is fortunate in that there's less of a formulaic path. I did get, why are you married? Why don't you have kids? And that sort of trailed off over the years. And I think it's a little different for people now, just starting to come into their 20s and 30s.
I've definitely noticed that for my generation, it shifted a little bit. And even working with the college students and college age women that I work with now, it's gone so far in the opposite direction. Well, I think I want to be childless by choice, and I want to make these decisions for myself, which is, I empower, do whatever you can. But it's so interesting to see how feminism changes throughout the generations.
Without question. My mom was one of the original modern day feminists. It's in my blood. It's an ever evolving notion. To me, it's about being free and having freedom to choose your path. Also, take what comes your way too, because you never know what's going to be around the corner.
Well, speaking of never knowing what's going to be around the corner, so shifting gears a little bit, you gave so much of yourself to your career, and you were unexpectedly laid off. Tell me about what that was like. How did that feel emotionally? What did that do to your career? Let's talk about it.
Yeah. Thank you for asking. Okay, I'm just going to start with saying I would be lying if I said, oh, it was fine. It's what I wanted. It was really hard. I managed to go 34 and a half years in consulting, never being laid off, never being between jobs unless by choice. I was already planning to leave. I had my exit date, and that was my planned exit date from my career. And it would have been 35 years, round number. I really wanted to leave on my own terms, and I didn't. I was invited to leave. I saw the writing on the wall. There was just a lot of change going on inside my company. Oh, I took a leave of absence. My mother was very ill all of 2021, and I went back and forth to take care of her. I closed a really huge deal, and the new fiscal year started, and I went into a new practice, which was a startup practice. And I was gone, and then I came back, and I just never got traction again in the new practice. And so I could say, oh, my numbers aren't great. When the economy started going down, and I knew there was a desire to shed some, I don't know, high cost resources. So I did. I got laid off. And I think the first thing was, how do I introduce myself? For all these years, 23 years at the partner level, I'm a partner at blah, blah firm. I do blah, blah, blah. And it was very awkward. Now, I was planning already. I had about a year's advance planning for my portfolio career. So I got my board director certification. I got on 2 nonprofit boards. Being a board director was part of my portfolio. I started doing the work to get my business reopened. I have my consultancy, Two Rivers Partners, that I did for 2 years before Accenture. When I took a break between one firm and my Accenture job, I put it on ice when I went to Accenture. So I started, let me start getting my website brushed up. I was thinking about it. It happened before I was ready, but you know what? I was paid for all of the time between the time I was laid off and my retirement date of Feb 1 through my severance package. So frankly, instead of having to make my pivot while working, I got to do it while not working. So I launched everything in July, and I have been so busy since, Christina. I'll just tell you, I have 5 buckets in my portfolio. The middle is friends, family, fun, and fitness. And then I have my advisory work, Two Rivers Partners, where I'm advising a lot of nonprofits. And I love working for purpose-led organizations. I'm a board director. I'm the chair of this global board that trains youth to lead in the issues that matter most to them. And I'm on the board of a mental illness nonprofit and a food insecurity nonprofit. I'm on a private board. I'm teaching at my alma mater this spring, a course on how to be a good consultant. Those are my buckets, and they're all just firing on all engines. If anything, I'm probably struggling with time management, but it happens so fast. I'm so happy about that. It wasn't because I started planning for it 20 years ago. It's because about 5 years ago, I started thinking about longevity with your mom, Eva Sage Gavin, my former boss. She introduced me to Stanford Center for Longevity. And I started looking into it. It's like, wow, longevity, we all have so much to do from our 60s onward. So I started getting interested in and thinking about, well, what's that going to look like for me? And so that was it. But the sting never goes away. It's not how I wanted to go out. But, someone told me, she goes, Barbara, your story is your story. And no one can take it away from you, no matter what happened. And that was really helpful. And then I got to sit down and started writing down my story and telling my story. It's like, yeah, it's a good story. And it doesn't change it.
It's a great story. Look at what you've been able to accomplish just in the short amount of time since that change has happened.
It's been awesome, I have to say. I'm so happy. When my boss, my favorite boss really ever, Eva Sage Gavin, your mother, left Accenture, I kind of knew that it was probably time for me to think about what was next. I went there for her. She hired me, and I went there to be with her and work with her. That helped a lot. I think just sort of, now this is coming to an end. I can see it. Now let me just start plotting the future.
How do you balance fulfillment, but also the practicalities of being able to do what you want in order to fulfill, your corporate mission, or maybe it's your personal mission for your career? Because that's something a lot of my generation struggles with, is wanting to find joy and fulfillment in our roles, but also having to be practical that living in the Bay Area is incredibly expensive. Living, in New York or in Massachusetts, like those are really expensive cities. So what does that balance look like for you? And what kind of advice do you have for that?
That is such a good question. People don't like to talk about money. Money is vital for existence, but also living your purpose. I advise a lot of nonprofits, and the first thing I really coach them on is, you're a commercial enterprise. I don't care if you're a nonprofit. I don't care if you have different tax structure. you're a commercial enterprise and you need to think about building your assets to make a greater impact with your mission. And that's how I'm viewing my life now. And that's really only like a 4-year-old concept, because literally I spent my whole 31 years before that helping companies make more money, implement technology, be more efficient, downsize, important stuff. I'm a capitalist, so let's get that, clear. My slogan now is I'm marrying mission and money. So I have enough for my retirement. I made sure that I have enough. If I had to stop working now, I'd be fine. Okay, so check that box. But I'm not ready to sit around and do nothing. I'm in my early 60s. I need to make enough money to fund my travel and my philanthropy. To serve on a nonprofit board, there's a give get, right? So you have to give them a certain amount of money. You agree, So I have to fund the nonprofits that I'm a board director on, which I don't have to because I have to, because I want to. Marrying mission and money is, making enough money to where I can do my philanthropic work. I advise a lot of nonprofits, so I can't charge Accenture rates, and I don't want to, and I don't need to. I have a low bono rate that I use with my nonprofit clients. That's to me like how I fulfill my purpose, because I'm working with a nonprofit that is driving sustainability across the value chain of apparel, or one that is growing allied healthcare workers to fill a critical talent gap. The fact that I can advise them as a consultant in a commercial arrangement, help them grow, do what they need to do, is mission for me. But I get paid for it, which I can either then choose to go travel and put money into my nonprofit. So to me, it's like a circular thing for where I am now. But it's that thing I said about wealth creation that is so key. Make sure by the time you're 60, 55, 60, you can be self-sustaining on what you've been able to accumulate over the years, so you can go and do the things that you want to do. Marry mission and money. Fill your purpose.
Yeah, you heard it here first that even I'm 28, but 60, it seems so far away. Yet at the same time, I know that it goes by in the blink of an eye, and all of a sudden you're in your 60s and you look back and you think, oh, if only I had done this, if only I had done this, my life would be so different.
I grew up in the generation where you don't talk about money. You don't even say the word. But it's important to really think about that early. Think about that long-term picture. Even though you don't know what the picture is going to look like, you're going to be doing something great because you're already great doing what you're doing now.
Yeah, I mean, for someone who has anxiety, that kind of like gives me a little heart flutters, but I've had anxiety for a long time, and I think a lot of women do. Type A women are more likely to have anxiety than non-type A, and there's a stat somewhere, I gotta find it. But you were diagnosed with anxiety kind of later in life, right?
Yes, I told you my mom became quite ill, and she lived in DC. It was from January of 2021 through September of 21 when she passed away. I was shuttling between New York and DC, and I was taking care of her, and I was selling this big deal. And when she finally passed away, I was depleted. I didn't know which way was up. So I took a mental health sabbatical and I started going to therapy. I've been to therapy over my career lots of times. I got a formal diagnosis of anxiety. And, a lot of people have anxiety, generalized anxiety disorder. I mean, we all are anxious. But, when I started reading about it, like, what does it mean, to have a diagnosis of it? I was like, oh my God, that explains everything. When I acted like a jerk, when I worked for so-and-so and I did this stupid thing, in my own head, right? That was my anxiety at play. Or when I ruminated and ruminated and ruminated over something that was so inconsequential in life, in my relationship, when I worry like, oh, what if, I just sort of realized that, oh my God, that is exactly what is going on with me. And I also know from being an Army brat, I probably have some learning deficiencies. I've never been diagnosed with any kind of learning thing, but when you go to so many schools, I was not a good student. And by the way, my other 3 siblings, they all excelled in school, like it really excelled, like genius level excel. Me, not so much. I was very social. I had fun. I hit the dean's list my last 2 years of college because my career counselor, Dr. Couch, said, young lady, you will never get into grad school. And that was it. That I was like, well, yeah, you just wait and see. And I ended up going to Columbia. All this like stuff, whether some learning difficulties and anxiety, I see how it's a superpower as well as it can be a deficiency if you don't understand it. But like for me, I can focus. I'm a good thinker. I'm a problem solver. You want something done? Call me. I'll get it done. All of that is just a function and a feature of being an anxious person. Once I learned how to sort of calm that down a little bit and take a step back and breathe before I talk and react, life has gotten a lot better since that time.
My eyes are just lighting up because I don't think I've ever heard someone say anxiety is a superpower, which I also think it is because I am the get it done girl. You know, you need something done, you go to Christina. I can hyper focus on something for a period of time and just plow through it, get it done, which is a symptom of anxiety, but at the same time works for me.
Let me ask you a question. Before you power through, how many hours do you spend worrying about that thing you have to do? I
Yeah,
spent
quite a
hours
lot.
worry. And then I sit down and I do. It's like, oh, that was easy. That took me an hour and I did it. It's really good. Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes I call it floor time, where I just need some time to sit on the floor if I'm overwhelmed, kind of collect myself. And then when it's time to go, it's time to go. And you just kind of get through it. I was diagnosed when I was so young. So I've learned all of these coping techniques. Being diagnosed as an adult later in your career, it must have been hard to kind of get those coping skills, but also so validating to know, oh, this is why I am this way, and this is why I do things this way.
Incredibly validating. So it's been 3 years almost, and can only say my life has improved. Now, is it that I left my job and I'm doing all this fun stuff and I'm now my own boss? I tell myself what to do. Maybe coupled with that, it all kind of came together. Maybe that's all converged. But look, I feel like when you have more years behind you than you have ahead of you, you darn well better spend every day as happy as you possibly can be, even though daily happiness is not realistic. It's like make the most of it because it's going to go fast.
Absolutely. So what does the next chapter look like for you now that you're your own boss? You have two Rivers partners. What is next for Barbara?
Yeah. Trip traveling, of course. I'm planning this amazing trip in 2025. I want to go snorkel with the humpback whales in Tonga, go to the Solomon Islands to scuba dive. Then I want to take the train from the tip of New Zealand down to the bottom. And then I want to catch a ship to Antarctica and then back home through South America. I'm seriously planning this trip, okay? Saving my pennies for it. So travel for sure, because there comes a time when, travel becomes harder. I want to continue to grow my business, my philanthropy, this board chair role with Restless Development. I'm so excited about it. Sierra Leone, they train girls who are either destined for or are going to be child married, how to earn money, making cakes, dyeing fabrics, giving them dignity and pride. And so like, I really want to lean into that work because I think it's so important as rights are being taken away all around the world, including our country. I'm looking for corporate board seats. I just secured my first private board seat, which is a big win, but I'd like to land a couple corporate board seats. I think I have what it takes to be at that board governance level. I think I can contribute a lot. And it's a wonderful sort of late career way to work and something you could do into your 70s and probably wind down the advisory and hopefully wind up some board seats and make that travel work equation shift and, I don't know, slow down eventually, I suppose.
It's
Maybe.
all a delicate balancing act.
It is. It's funny you have to start thinking about that. Of course, health is everything, but you really do have to have a plan, I think, when you start to enter your later decades of life.
And as you look back on your career, what would you say is one piece of advice you would give your 20-year-old self?
Just one. It's that thing I said around believe in yourself or act like you believe in yourself, even if you don't. We can all do so much. We found ourselves in the wrong job sometimes. Like, no, this is not a fit for me. I can't do this job. I shouldn't be doing it. But having the courage to be self reflective and move on instead of fighting it or feeling badly about it or whatever you may be feeling, having the confidence to go and move to do something else. I was never a big risk taker. I never started my business until I was 55. I think it's believing in yourself and knowing you can do almost anything because we all can do almost anything. And too many people are getting that message that they can't and they're not enough and you are enough. I wish I had believed that a lot more when I was younger.
You are enough. I think everybody needs to hear that, men and women. That is not female specific because I know a lot of men who struggle with that.
It's so true. And we don't talk about it either, right? Because of course I'm confident. And sometimes confidence can turn into arrogance. Then you're just a jerk. An unconfident jerk. Talking about it and being self-aware about it is really important, because then you can be human, have some humility, and be open and authentic in who you really are.
Being your authentic self is most important, something we talk about a lot here.
Yes, you do. And I love that. Authenticity. Be yourself, everyone else is taken. I love that saying. It's okay to be who you are because everyone's great.
I think that is the perfect place to end. I don't know where you go after that. So, Barbara, I want to thank you so much for coming on the Christina in the Valley podcast. I hope everyone gained just a lesson of truth from this episode. We're so excited to have you. It's a pleasure.
Oh, Christina, thank you so much. I really enjoy talking to you every time I talk to you. Best of luck, and thank you for having me as your guest.
As always, if you love our chat, please be sure to like and follow so you never miss an episode. The best way to support this podcast is to share with your friends and family. Follow me on Instagram and TikTok and YouTube at Christina in the Valley for some exclusive and behind the scenes content. See you soon.